discuss about temperature and also the different controls of temperature. What affects the temperature of a particular place? Why is it that some places are colder compared to other places? So we are going to answer that in this lecture. Okay, so let's start. Okay, now let's define first temperature. What is temperature? When we say temperature, it tells us about the quantity, telling us how warm or how cold an object is with respect to a standard. That's why we are using, of course, thermometers for us to be able to compare it with a standard. And it's also related to the random motion of the molecules in the substance. And take note that it is proportional to the average kinetic energy of molecular translational motion. So we look at, when we say translational motion, it's the linear motion of the molecules. So it's related to that kinetic energy, okay? Later, I'll show you some simulation on what happens to the molecules when temperature is increased or decreased. Okay, we have different scales. For example, we have here degree Fahrenheit, degree Celsius, and also Kelvin. Okay, so we have Kelvin scale. Kelvin scale is named after British physicist Lord Kelvin, wherein 0 is assigned to be the lowest possible temperature. That is also known as the absolute zero, which is equivalent to negative 273.15 degrees Celsius. When we say that it's already at absolute zero, that means that the molecules are no longer moving. We also have Celsius scale. This one is named after Swedish astronomer Anders Celsius, wherein 0 is assigned to be the temperature or the freezing point of water, and then 100 is the boiling point of water. While for Fahrenheit scale, 32 is assigned to be the temperature at which water freezes, and 212 is assigned to which water boils. Okay, when we say thermometer, it's actually acting like a speedometer because it provides us with a measure of the amount of kinetic energy of the translational motion of the object. Now we have here temperature scale conversion. If, for example, you're given Kelvin, you just subtract 273.15 to get degrees Celsius. And then vice versa, if you're given degrees Celsius, you simply add 273.15 and then you will have Kelvin scale. And then for this one, if you're given Fahrenheit, subtract 32 to that Fahrenheit reading divided by 1.8 and you will get degrees Celsius. If you're given degrees Celsius, multiply it by 1.8, add 32 and you will have degree Fahrenheit. But we will no longer convert temperature units in this subject. So right now, I'm going to show you a simulation on temperature and how it affects the motion of the molecules. So let's add heat or thermal energy to the system, and then I want you to observe the movement of the molecules. So you can see now that the temperature scale is increasing. And you can also observe that the molecules are moving faster and faster. So their kinetic energy also increases. Then let's try to cool this down. Let's decrease the temperature and observe what happens to the molecules. Okay, so you can see now that as you decrease the temperature, the molecules are moving at a slower rate. So the kinetic energy decreases. Okay, now let us discuss the following terms. We have the daily mean temperature, the daily temperature range, and then the monthly mean temperature. Daily mean temperature is determined by averaging the 24 hourly readings or by adding maximum and minimum temperatures for a 24-hour period and dividing it by 2. For example, 7 o'clock meron kang temperature reading, 8 o'clock, i-note mo ulit yung temperature reading, 9 o'clock, so 24 hours. Then you add all those and then divide it by 24. You will get the daily mean temperature. Parang average grade din yan. If you have 8 subjects, you add all the grades and then divide it by 8. Or you can also have the maximum temperature reading plus the minimum temperature reading and then you divide it by 2. So that's the daily mean temperature. Next is the daily temperature range. It's just finding the difference between the minimum and the maximum temperatures. Then the next term that you have to understand is the monthly mean temperature, calculated by adding together the daily means. Siyempre, halimbawa, we have 30 days for a month. You have the daily mean temperature for each day. Then you add all those divided by 30 days. And you will get the monthly mean temperature. Okay, we also have the annual mean temperature. So this time is the average of the 12 monthly means. You add the 12 readings and then divide it by 12. Then the annual temperature range is getting the difference between the warmest and the coldest monthly temperature. Okay, we also have this term isotherm, a line that connects points on the map that have the same temperatures from the term iso or equal. And then let's also discuss temperature gradient, wherein it's the amount of temperature change per unit of distance. So it's the delta temperature or delta T. Take note also that closely spaced isotherms means there's a rapid rate of temperature change. Kapag they are more widely spaced, that means there is only a gradual change in the temperature. Okay, for example, in this illustration, you can see here, yan, 50 degrees. They have the same temperature, 55 degrees. Yan, line na yan, it has a temperature of 50 degrees. And then this line has a temperature of 55 degrees. Then this one is 60 degrees. Yan, they are closely spaced, so that means there's a rapid temperature change. This a distance na yon. And then we have here 65 degrees, 70 degrees, and then 75 degrees. This time, at that region, there is a gradual change in the temperature. Okay, now let's discuss the different controls of temperature. We have land and water, ocean currents, altitude, geographic position, cloud cover, and albedo. Now, before we discuss this, can you try to answer one or explain one control of temperature? For example, how does land and water control temperature? Or how do ocean currents control temperature? How does altitude control temperature? Kindly write your answer in the comments in our group or in the YouTube channel, okay? So before we discuss it, then let me see what's your prior knowledge about these factors affecting the temperature. Okay, so please write it down or please encode it. Pili lang kayo ng isa. Okay, so let's take a look at the first control of temperature. Let's have land and water. Okay, I want you to look at this illustration. So you have here at the bottom the different temperature scales per color. And then I want you to look at the temperature beside a body of water. So you have here the Pacific Ocean. Yan. Beside body of water, yan, we have another body of water. The color is yellow. So that means it's at a colder temperature compared to dun sa red ones. Now, how can we consider that land or water is a control of temperature? Okay, I want you to look at this one, heating of land and water. Land heats up faster and cools down faster than water. Later, I will explain what property of water and land is responsible for that. But take note that land always heats up faster and also cools down faster compared to water. Kaya for those who are inland, mas madali umakyat yung or tumaas yung temperature compared to those who are besides or compared to those which are besides bodies of water. We also have these factors. Different land surfaces reflect and absorb varying amounts of incoming solar energy, causing variations in the temperature of the air above. Greatest contrast can be seen between land and water. And land heats more rapidly to higher temperatures than water, and also it cools down more rapidly to lower temperatures than water. Then it also depends on the reflecting surfaces on land. So, halimbawa, depende pa sa paint ng buildings. We know that white is more reflective compared to sa dark-colored objects. Okay, so, mas nare-reflect nila yung rays coming from the sun. Unlike do sa mga dark-colored objects. If we will also compare water and land, water is also considered to be highly mobile. So that means it can move around. Kasi it can evaporate, then it will condense. Therefore, the thermal energy that it has could also be transferred to other objects, okay? Or other surfaces. Kasi nga, water is highly mobile. If we are going to look at this illustration also, land surfaces are opaque and heat is absorbed only at the surface, while water is more transparent, allowing some solar radiation to penetrate to a depth of several meters. Okay? So you can see there the daily temperature change for land and then for water. So the property that is responsible for faster heating of land and then slower heating of water is the specific heat capacity. Specific heat capacity is defined as the amount of heat needed to raise the temperature of 1 gram of a substance by 1 degree Celsius. So if you are going to take a look at the table, the soil has 0.25 calorie per gram Celsius degree for its specific heat capacity, while water has 1 calorie per gram Celsius degree. So that means water has to absorb more thermal energy before it increases its temperature by 1 Celsius degree. Unlike for soil, it only has to absorb 0.25 calorie per gram before it increases its temperature. So, mas mabilis talaga mag-increase yung temperature ng soil kumpara dun sa water. So, one example, if you are in the beach and then it's daytime, you can observe that the land, sobrang init siya sa umaga. Pero the water, it's just warm, pero hindi naman ganun kainit. But during nighttime, what happens is, sa gabi naman, sobrang lamig naman yung sand kumpara dun sa water. Because nga, as I have mentioned, water has higher specific heat capacity. It will heat up at slower rate. It will also release its energy at slower rate. Unlike for land, it heats up at faster rate, pero mabilis din siya mag-release ng energy. So, ganyan din yung explanation if we are going to compare inland at saka yung mga nakatira with bodies of water, it will be more it will be warmer inland compared dun sa surrounded by bodies of water. Let's say, for example, at a desert, during daytime, it would be very hot. It will reach a very high temperature, but during nighttime, it will be very cold because nga land also releases heat at a faster rate compared to land which are surrounded by bodies of water. So the bodies of water can control the temperature of the land, or the bodies of water can control the temperature na hindi ganun kabilis magbago. Okay, let's take a look at this one also. Take note that evaporation is a cooling process. When water molecules escape the surface of liquid, they leave behind molecules with less kinetic energy. This results in a net cooling of the liquid. So evaporation, let's say, from bodies of water is greater than from land surfaces. So the first layer ng body of water, that will absorb heat so that it will evaporate. That's why the remaining liquid or the remaining layer will be at a lower temperature because evaporation is considered to be a cooling process with respect to its surroundings. Okay? So take note of that. Since mas mataas ang evaporation in water bodies, so it will be cooler if you are surrounded by water, unlike if you are inland. Okay, I want you to look at this illustration also. We have different distribution of land and ocean at the North Pole and South Pole. If you're going to observe at the Northern Hemisphere, yan, at a latitude of 0 degree, yan yung equator. 0 degree to positive 90 degrees, we have higher land areas compared to 0 degrees to negative 90 degrees. But for the ocean areas, you can also take a look at that the ocean areas would also be larger at the South Pole or at the Southern Hemisphere compared to the Northern Hemisphere. That's why if you are going to compare the temperature range, at the Southern Hemisphere we have 0, 4, 7. We have colder temperature compared to the Northern Hemisphere because of the distribution of land and water. So you can see here also, we are expecting that there should be imbalance in the latitudinal heat because nga magkaiba yung North Pole and South Pole. Okay, so now let's answer the latitudinal heat imbalance. We are expecting that would be a latitudinal heat imbalance dahil nga near the equator, they are heated. They are much heated kumpara dun sa mga North Pole and South Pole. So, pero bakit kaya hindi naman nagkakaroon ng imbalance when it comes to heat or heat distribution? We are expecting also that the North Pole has or always has higher temperature kumpara sa South Pole. Then yung nga sa mga equator, they always have higher temperature kumpara dun sa poles. Resolve that imbalance. Okay? So we have this latitudinal heat balance. Then, yun na yung role ng ocean current. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, we have these ocean currents na tinatawag natin thermohaline circulation, the Great Ocean Conveyor Belt. So, currents circulate water through the world's oceans like a giant conveyor belt, carrying heat from the tropics towards the poles and then sending colder water back in deep currents. And also wind and temperature, or wind, temperature, salinity also affects this motion. Then the movement of the wind, it also carries surface water with it, so that there will be balance in the heat distribution. Okay? So yan nga yung example we have here, a great ocean conveyor belt. Okay, next illustration. Take note that the poleward moving currents are warm kasi nga galing sila sa equator, so they will be moving towards the pole and it carries warm water with them. Yun namang galing sa poles towards the equator, it carries cold water with them. So that is ocean current being a control of temperature also. Okay? So surface ocean currents are driven by global winds and play an important role in redistributing heat around the globe so that there will be no imbalance in the heat distribution. Okay, now to summarize how ocean currents are being control of temperature, we have here surface ocean currents have an important effect on climate. The gains in solar energy equal to the losses to space of heat radiated from the surface, and then the transfer of heat by winds and ocean currents equalizes the latitudinal energy imbalances. Okay? So nga, poleward currents carry warm water with them, and then yun namang mga equatorward currents carry cold water with them, so that there will be balance in the heat distribution. Okay, next. Okay, you can also observe here differences in temperature depending on the altitudes. Okay, halimbawa, ikumpara natin sa temperature sa Baguio kumpara sa ating temperature. So, we have different temperature range. So, ito naman sa ibang bansa, ito yung La Paz and Concepcion. Okay, you can see here, the higher the altitude, what happens to the atmospheric pressure? There is a decrease in the atmospheric pressure as you increase the altitude. Okay, in altitude naman, how does it affect temperature? The higher the altitude is, the lower will be the temperature. Okay, temperatures drop with an increase in altitude, and daily temperature range also changes with variations in height, and atmospheric pressure and density also diminishes as you are increasing the altitude. And then with an increase in altitude, the intensity of solar radiation increases, resulting to rapid and intense daytime heating. Sa umaga, since exposed naman yung mga higher altitude at daytime, they also have a tendency to have higher temperature. But at nighttime, magkakaroon sila ng rapid cooling or rapid nighttime cooling because that energy that the land absorbed could also be emitted immediately or emitted. That energy that the land absorbed will also be emitted or radiated at nighttime. So there is a rapid nighttime cooling if you are in a higher altitude. Okay, another one, we have this geographic position. Meron tayong tinatawag na windward and leeward. Okay, windward coast will experience the full moderating influence of the ocean. So, saan yung windward? Okay, here, we have here, so windward, and then here is the leeward side of the mountain. Leeward coast naman will have a more continental temperature. So, pag windward, para silang mas malapit syempre sa water, they are expected to have lower temperature kumpara dun sa leeward side of the mountain. Okay? Which is expected to have a higher temperature. Yun nga tinatawag nating more continental temperature. So, we have here the windward and then the leeward. Okay, now I want you to look at this. You have here the hours of a day, and then we have clear day, and then you have overcast day. And then you compare the temperature. So, tignan natin. Okay, what can you say about the temperature? Let's say 6 o'clock. Clear day tayo, ha? You have here, the temperature here, at 6 o'clock. Okay, yan yung temperature natin at around 16 degrees Celsius. Kapag overcast naman, so that means it's a rainy day or marami, it's a cloudy day. Okay, you can expect here that the temperature is higher. And then when it's noon, you're also expecting during clear day that the temperature here at noontime still higher. Kapag overcast naman, lower. And then at nighttime, looking at this, let's say nighttime, the temperature here will be lower compared kapag overcast. So you observe, kapag cloudy, but it's nighttime and it's cloudy, you can see the stars above. It's a cloudy night, so maalinsangan yung temperature or maalinsangan yung panahon. It is considered to have higher temperature kumpara kapag clear yung sky. Okay? It is because of the reflection of the clouds. Yan yung tinatawag nating albedo. Okay, let's take a look at another control of temperature. Okay, there. So you can see here, during daytime and it's cloudy, you are expecting the temperature to be lower. Kasi nga, here, these are the rays of the sun or sun's rays, magre-reflect lang sila. Okay, there. Parang naboblock sila nung clouds during daytime. But during nighttime, we know that the ground level is already heated. So it can also store energy. And we are expecting it to escape during nighttime. But what happens during nighttime, if it's overcast or marami siyang, if it's cloudy, if it's overcast, during nighttime, nagre-reflect din siya. Pero it's coming from the ground there. Then magre-reflect din siya pababa. That's why it will be very hot or the temperature is higher if it is overcast or if you have a cloudy night. Okay? If you cannot see the stars and then mafe-feel nyo yun, mainit yung temperature. That's because of the reflection of sun's rays or reflection of heat by the clouds. Okay, we have now here the cloud cover or albedo. Cloud cover is important because many clouds have a high albedo, so that it means it can reflect a significant proportion of the sunlight that strikes them back to space. And then at nighttime, it absorbs and reflects outgoing Earth radiation. So, outgoing dapat siya, kaya lang it will be reflected back to the Earth. Cloud cover reduces daily temperature range by lowering the daytime maximum and raising the nighttime minimum. Snow and ice also, or snow and ice covered surfaces also have high albedos. Snow and ice, they are white, so they are also highly reflective. Kaya kapag covered ng snow, we are expecting that we have a lower temperature. Okay? Hindi lang dahil malamig yung snow, but because it's reflecting the radiation coming from the sun. Controls of temperature, we have land and water, we also have ocean currents, then we also have albedo or cloud cover. Now you know why do we have different temperatures and also altitude and the different factors affecting the temperature. Kahit na nasa Pilipinas tayo, we have varied temperatures from one place to another because of those factors. Okay? So see you in the next video or see you in the next lecture that we are going to have. Bye everyone!